Move the slides.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Professor Tuan Dean, sorry, here at Triton College, full-time faculty member in the math department, but also the faculty member for the CTE. Today, my colleague and I, Shelley, are going to be presenting on how to motivate the unmotivated. And it's not just looking at our students, it's also ourselves, because we all have those days where we're like, oh, I don't want to go in. And then when you get here, you're like, oh, I don't want to teach them. Just do a test. Or just read, or go home. Any of the variety of things that we do. So today we're going to talk about those things and how we can stay motivated, but also keep our students motivated. And again, for me, very shortly, I use a lot of different antidotes, and it's like trial and error. You really just have to try different things. And as I tell some people, after you know your students and the environment that you're in with them, it's easy to see or say what things to keep them motivated as well too. Books that we may read or articles out there that talk about motivating students. Yeah, these things are great when you don't know your students, but when you do, you may tweak those things just to keep them, the spark interesting. So before, let me turn it over to Shelley, who's going to do the well, I did the introduction.
You already did the introduction.
You're right. Who's going to do the first part, and then I'll come in and talk about some other things that you can keep in the classroom to motivate your students and yourselves.
Right. Well, thank you, Tuan, and you are the main presenter today. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to go over some of the data that reflects, unmotivated student, right? So if you can pull it. But otherwise, we'll be focusing more on the strategies. I thought, when we talk about unmotivated students, obviously we're talking about our own classes, like we've seen, anecdotally we say, yeah, the student was unmotivated. But I just wanted to share, and I don't know how much you know about CESI data. If you want to learn more, you can look at the CESI data, Community College Survey of Student Engagement, on the research portal. So if you have not had any your class 2-1, have you had this survey done with your students, any of your classes?
I have. I have had my students take it before. I haven't had this semester. I think it's every
3 years.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's a good instrument, just to give you a little background, to really see how engaged our students are. Really. So this really measures and it benchmarks with other institutions. So we participated in it too. And it really, again, tells a lot about our student learning and retention and engagement. So I wanted to go quickly with the 5 benchmarks of engagement. We talk about student engagement, right? So the 5 benchmarks that we measure against, again, among our students and also other institutions are active and collaborative learning, right? So how actively they're learning, how actively we're engaging our students. So there's certain questions in this benchmark that, again, all our students answer. Student effort, and this is where we'll be focusing on when we talk about unmotivated students. So students' own behaviors contribute significantly to their learning. Absolutely. As much as we want to do it, faculty say, learn it, be successful, unless they take ownership and put the effort that's needed, right, can't go anywhere. So that's this is of particular interest to me, this benchmark. Like, let's see something changed. Where do all other institutions, stand? And then obviously there's 3 more about academic challenge. How much are we challenging our students? So those interesting questions. Interaction between student and faculty, and then what kind of support as an institution do we provide to our learners? So several questions in that. Again, the one that is of more importance to us in our conversations today, as we look at the topic, is the motivation topic really can align with student effort. So 2021 was the last one. In fact, I updated the slide just an hour ago. Last one was 2018, and this really again tells us where we stand in Triton College, what our students are responding in terms of these engagement benchmarks versus other institutions. So if you look at particularly a student effort, right? So you can see 47, and we'll forget the math for a second. All I can see is that we are lower than other institutions. In general, if you look at other benchmarks, in general, student effort is low. So let's look at some particular questions that we ask our students and what really contributes to this low student engagement benchmark or student effort, right? So if you look at this, so they answer these few questions. The one that's particularly contributing to this low score is, if you look at this, they ask, so the survey asked the question, how many hours are you spending in preparing for a class? It could be studying, reading, writing, right? Rehearsing, doing your homework and other activities related to your program. So in general, this is one of the lowest aspects. And it's interesting that 10A is not that's the one that's closely related to motivation. But if you look at other ones, that's not as relevant to our topic, but they're all coming from student effort. So what we're given as a summary report is 5 measures of where we're low and 5 were high. And we're really low in student effort. So we're seeing some other things. And there too, like the use of skill labs. It's just not the reporting that they're not using the skill lab, right? The reporting. So I thought that was interesting to me, interesting for this topic. And really the motivation for us to do this workshop when I first wrote it, I think this must have been 3-4 years back. Because this was really mentioned in the CT survey when we said, what is one of the topics? What would you like us to give training on this? I just don't know. I don't know how to motivate today's students. It's just not motivated. They don't want to work. What can we do? What strategies can you share with us? So I said, you know what? Let's put together something. And while we're not saying this is the one that's going to work, but maybe we can share among what has worked for you, and just hopefully come up with some of the strategies that can motivate today's students. So that's my little. Do you have any questions on the graphic part? If you want to see full report, it is available under Employee Resources Research when you log in the portal, and you can see information about all the benchmarks and everything we've collected. So with that, I am going to now turn it over back to Tuan, and now we're going to talk about, okay, now that we know our students are not as engaged, motivation being one of them, what can we do? So Tuan?
Well, I want to start with the following and ask how many of you, or let's start it over. What do you do on the first day or in the beginning of class? Are you greeting your students? Dancing with your students? Maybe sharing some pizza? I know that's what we talked about in my last class. Yes, Vincent?
So I usually, the first day of class, I do some sort of icebreaker when I'm doing attendance, rather than just getting the names. I start with myself, sharing some things. Like if it's in the fall, then I might ask if you went on a vacation in the summer and you want to talk about it. I remember during COVID, I asked, did you binge any television shows? Because I'm looking for something to watch. And so I start by sharing a little bit about myself so they get an idea of what it's like, so they can maybe be a little more comfortable sharing. And of course, I also don't force them to share anything they don't want to. But and they usually join in and maybe at least say that they like playing soccer or something like that. So, okay. And then oftentimes I'll chat with them a little bit about it in between, rather than just have them say it. I might say how it relates to something in my life, like, oh, my kids play soccer too, so I know what that's like.
Oh, I like that. Yes, Margaret. And nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Just a reminder, not about all of us teach in the classroom. I'm a clinical instructor, so I'm not in the classroom, so I'm in the hospital with nursing students. So I greet them, when they first come in, and I try to, be warm and excited that they're there. And then we do an orientation before we get on the floors of patients. But one of the things that we kind of go around, and there's a series of questions I ask them, and I share my answers too, to get to know each other better. But the thing that I'm really trying to build is relevance and importance and a personal connection to the work that we're going to do. So I ask them, Why did you choose nursing? Do you have any specialty areas of interest? We're in the mental health setting, but I try to tie in where their specialty areas are relevant in the mental health setting and vice versa. What is a stress management technique they use? Because we're trying to encourage patients to use techniques, so tying that in. And then if they have any fears, so right off the bat, I try to create like a safe space and also decrease those anxieties and things like that. So I find that works well.
It does. It does. In fact, some of the research in this case talks about having students have a sense of belonging in the class, so they'll be motivated as well too. And having those small chats. It's interesting that, oh, Maureen, come on, share with us. We don't bite a lot.
So these days, there's always small chat that goes on. But if it's on a Tuesday, I might ask if they did anything fun over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
If it seems as if the responses I'm getting is that everyone just seems to be working and working and working, then what is the most delicious thing you had to eat recently? So if not an activity, then what about a food?
Wow, Ashley did that. Ashley, all of it. My class, in this case, we were walking in, and one person was talking about eating. I'm like, oh my God, I would love a pizza. And I know these things to most instructors will say, oh, that sounds tedious. However, it's those little things that we do that get our students interested in coming back. And they're motivated to actually have conversations. So I've learned over the time, like Shelley said before, that this is like 4 or 5, even 6 years. And before, when I went to the classroom, I would do these little intricacies and just try to get my students engaged, trying to get my students motivated, trying to get myself motivated as well too, because like I said before, most of us in this case, we go to our class, and you're like, oh, the same people again, or you're like, oh, I hate this person, they're going to do this and do that. But you try to find these things to motivate you. And especially when you mentioned about COVID, especially when remote teaching, I actually threw up sayings on my board. So when students will come into class in the Blackboard, I would have like a saying, and I'll be talking about it and saying, oh my God, the motivation today is supposed to be overwhelming. Or my favorite in this case was success comes in cans, and I had a can because my students, I facilitated my class here on campus. So I had a can, and I was shaking it, and they could see me on camera. And I said, I know most of you are laughing at me, but that's okay. We're going to have a fun class. I'm trying to get them to be more engaging, but also have fun with it as well, too. With some of, like I said, the research out there, as Shelley was talking about, we're looking at these things of why our students are not motivated, and they feel this pressure, maybe from home, maybe from themselves, or maybe because the fact that, like you're saying, for clinicals, they're like, oh my God, I need to have this grade so I can get into clinicals, so I can do my job, but I can't do it because I got to pass math class. For those who didn't know, I teach math, everyone's favorite and hated subject. Or they have that low self-esteem. They're just like, oh, I know this, I know it for a fact, so I'm just going to be like one of my students on the first day. Came in, oh, math. I'm like, really? I'm going to give you some money. Wait, what? Yeah, that's math. I said, we're going to have some math. It wasn't real money. It was play. Let me just say that because I don't think when everyone thinks I have $1 million and some dollars. But I did these things to get them excited, but also to stay motivated, saying that every day that I'm going to do something different in this case. The lack of support from home, yeah, there we do have our first generational students who may not have that support at home. Therefore, they look at it to us to maybe give them that support. Now, again, I say look into us as a big thing because we are educators, practitioners as well too, but we are educators and practitioners out there doing these things. They have no one else to turn to. They don't have anyone to look up to. So if we come in that lack of motivation, they're going to do the same thing. Or low expectations in the classroom. Never wanted to see anything relevant, like you said as well too. I love that because in class, I love when the students like, oh, professor, where are we ever going to see this? And I've learned from my department chair, who used to be our department chair, Dr. Ellen O'Connell, lovely woman who used to be here. And she said, don't just say what they're going to be learning. Talk about where it's going to be utilized. If it is going to be in nursing, if it's going to be in the science discipline, or just sitting in the corner. I always relate to something in the class based on what we're talking about, so I can see that look and saying, I never knew that was going to happen. Yeah, it may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but it's down the line you are going to see it, rather than just saying, I'm just here to learn it. No, there's a reason. There's a reason why. And then my favorite at the end, like it says, the lack of teacher enthusiasm. Yeah, students who are coming to our classrooms, if they're not excited because you're not excited, they don't want to be there, neither do you. So how do we keep that motivation for ourselves? Well, again, how do we motivate ourselves to be in the classroom? Well, just covering that material, even though we know our subject matter, we know our content, but maybe have a little twist with it. I know math is all about looking at algorithms. Algorithms, oh my God. But I actually have fun with it and have songs with it as well too for my class, but that's just me. I try not to have a lot of low self-esteem, even though there's days, I have to admit, I'm sitting in my car, not this class again. But I try to find something good. And in fact, I told my students I listen to a song in my vehicle, and then I walk out my vehicle, I'm still singing that song. So I'm trying to think of how to relate it to today's lesson. We have the lack of support from our colleagues. I'm trying my best. And I think that lack of support from colleagues when you try to do something interesting or exciting in your class, you're like, why did you do that? Well, because it's my class and I want to be exciting. I want my students to have excitement as well too. Or that professional disrespect. Yeah, research does say that most institutions, most colleagues in this case, don't feel respected in their own workplace, regardless of what it is, if it's gender, ethnicity, sexuality, or tall, being short, being fat, or being skinny, maybe not being that respectful. So therefore they feel that, why should I do the same thing for an institution that doesn't care? The lack of self-motivation. I think we all have to dig deep for that one, but we can't. We can't find that motivation in ourselves. Because I was thinking in this case, when it was a bad day, I think to myself, why did I ever become an educator? Can't be the pay. That was when you all laughed. Okay, good. Okay. All right, and negative relationships. Well, I try not to have any negative relationships with colleagues or friends or my students as well too. I'm always trying to be sympathetic because I understand life is not easy. And again, like you said, Vincent, as well too, having that, trying to have that icebreaker. And I found out listening to your students and seeing or listening to what they're going through and incorporating that, and they're like, oh my God, Margaret did listen to me, or Professor Margaret did listen to me. So she cares. So let me keep going. Let me keep going, because if she's caring, then that shows someone respects me. Yeah. So here are some strategies that doing some research that I've learned that could help as well too. Vincent, you said it best. Share a story with your students. I do it all the time. And I love when students a scenario was I told them that I took my calculus class and my teacher, in this case professor, hated us. And I said, no lie, she hated us. She said every day she came to class, she's like, you in the blue, what did you do? I'm Tuan, by the way, what did you do? My students always laugh. And he's like, you didn't do that. Yes, I did. Because she didn't respect me. Why should I respect her? She didn't call me by my name. She said, you. Or, here's my favorite, number 6. Who the deuce is she talking to? You. Oh, no. So learning your student's name is a great way of having that sense of belonging and support as well too. Yes, ma'am.
That actually, I forgot, before I even do the introductions and after I get them, I pass around like a sheet and I ask them, what is your name? or what is your preferred name, we like to be called, because
Mhm.
it's not always what their name is.
That is true.
Then I ask for their pronouns, like to say that, like write their pronouns, because being a mental health professional, using the correct name and pronouns like really impacts students' mental health,
Mhm.
in particular suicide actually. So I forgot I do that.
Oh, no, that's fine.
It,
In fact,
it reminded me of that.
oh, in fact, we had a wonderful presenter that came in to talk to Triton College. About 72 people showed up here in the room and also online. Great presenter in regards to pronouns and how they really make a difference to individuals. So yeah, you're absolutely correct about that. Incorporate, well, there we are, incorporate their name, their majors, and the learning process. So again, for me, for mathematics, when they're doing something, if I'm doing a problem, and I say, oh, you know what? And like I said, Dr. Ellen O'Connell, who used to be the department chair, said, yeah, show them where the relevance, how it's connected, where they're going to use it. Maybe not when, but where. So I do that as well too. And I always try to spark some kind of curiosity. And I did that today, and I'm surprised at myself because I even told my students, I put a problem on the board. I said, you know what? This is a problem of looking at an engine and how it fails. We need to find out how fast this engine will fail. And everybody was like, what? Yeah. I said, I know, I said, most of you may not be engineers, but you drive vehicles when you want to know when your engine fails. Didn't realize they were still doing math. But it sparked that interest in saying, oh my God, let's find out how many seconds it would take for the wheel to fall off, or in this case, it was actually for the engine to not operate. But hey, it was so fun. Have some experiments. Use that extreme factor and rewards. My class got a reward today. So again, I used that as well too. I eliminated all the extremities. And I gave them a problem to work on as a group. And I told them to choose a number between 1 and infinity. And they did. And I said, because you all worked on us as a group, because that's what I wanted them to do, that communication, to talk with each other. And they did. They huddled around each other. In fact, the one person, I'll say Vincent in this case, it wasn't Vincent, but Vincent in this case said, you know what, Professor, can I phone a friend? I said, you can phone an entire classroom if you want to. And he did. He told everybody, let's get together and try to figure this out, not knowing they were getting 30 points to apply to where they needed the most. But it gave them an incentive to work together. I wanted them to work together. Some other strategies you can use, create activities that are free from a grade. In this case, they didn't know they were getting points for it. It's not a grade, it's just awarding them for it. Ask students to what that motivates them. Maybe play some videos in this case, or some type of motivational game. Group work works as well too. You can also do what is called practice what you teach. I do that a lot. I hate being in front of the classroom and just talking. And I know most of you are probably thinking, no, it sounds like you do like to talk. But I actually sit with my students and actually talk with them instead of talking to them. Allow time for them to process. And again, like I said, that was what we were doing today when they were doing the assignment. Didn't know they were working on a math problem about the car. But I was walking around listening to them, but having them to have their own time and space and that open communication. And for those who are thinking, well, Tuan, how many students are you talking about? My class only has 8 students, and all my 8 students always show up because I'm doing something different every day with them, and they not know what today was going to be like. So I know. I practice what I'm teaching. All right. So challenge your students. Maybe challenge them a little bit. Bring up different scenarios that you may use. I know that being a practitioner, you could do that as well too. I know in science we can. Lab day. Always encourage them. Again, that is the biggest thing that has been in the research in this case, that most students don't feel encouraged, especially when we're talking about our first generation students and our low income or even our at-risk students who really didn't have this support in high school. And if they didn't have the support in high school, they feel it's going to translate into the college level as well too. And yes, I have to say that we do have colleagues who don't care but we want to show them that we do, because we're here, we're learning, we're talking to each other to find out what things that we can do in the classroom. Discover your own passion. I tell my students I love math, and they think I make it up, and I don't, because I have a shirt, pants, cufflinks, scarf, socks. I say I'm still waiting to get underwear. They laugh about that one. I say I'm still waiting to find some, and I'll be all math. Create a learning environment that's supportive, and again, there's different ways to do that based on how you learn your students and when you learn about them. Using the icebreaker to find out a little bit about them. Having that conversation like I do with my morning class. Every day I will have one person, I'll just say to them, oh, what did you do for the weekend? And try to relate that to what we were talking about in class, but also say, oh my God, I did that too, knowing I did. I just want them to feel that I'm human too. I'm human too. And always praise your students. With first generational students, and I know I'm sticking on the topic of first generational students because that's what we mostly get at Triton College. These first generational students do not have that appraisal from home because they're going into fields or going into subject matters that parents don't know anything about. And I have to tell them, I sympathize with you because my parents, in this case, I'm a first generational student. My parents, God rest their souls, my dad, who was from Cuba, in this case for all of you, came here when he was 3. Now, does it really matter? I think for some of my students, I think it's important for them to know. My dad didn't know anything. So when my dad was saying, oh, Juan, what's calculus? He didn't know what that was. He didn't know how to deal with it. Even though I am number 5 of my siblings, I have 4 older brothers, and the rest of my siblings under me, it's 11 of us all together. He didn't know what to do. He has a child, smart, whereas I had brothers who were stupid. And I say this, but not in their faces because they're my brothers. But I tell my students, yeah, I had a brother. I grew up, hell, we went to the same grade. He's 2 years older than I am. It's like, what's that got to do with anything, Tuan? Because I'm trying to get them to be encouraged that I know what you're going through. It's not easy when you don't have the support from home, in this case, and those individuals who don't know anything or what to do. There's a person who may be in your class or clinical, I apologize, in this case who says, yeah, I want to be a nurse. You're like, oh, do you have any inspiration or do you know anyone that inspires you to be a nurse? They maybe can't answer that question. So they don't have someone to look up to. You are that person. Or, mention you're in science class and you're like, oh my God, I was excited to get here. Oh my God, chemistry is so hard. Yeah. What do you do? Try to give them encouragement and say, yeah, it is, but you can do it. You can do it. I even relate a story that I had in high school, my chemistry class. Hector blew up our lab. He was a senior at the time. So wonderful stuff. Wonderful. Energize. Add energy. I guess I shouldn't have to do that, right? I tell my students this is all natural. I maybe have a beer. What? Yeah, it's called root beer. Yeah. Give them a purpose, demonstrate and show the encouragement while you're doing that. Maybe do some service around the campus, in this case, engage in the community. That, in this case, I've learned looking at a presentation, and it was mainly geared to 4-year institutions and saying how to be more engaging. However, and doing that service, because some institutions require faculty to be a service on campus doing something. We are at a 2-year institution. We can still do the same thing. And if students see us actively around the campus, that will maybe give them that encouragement that they can do something as well too. And trust, build that trust with your students. Yes, it's always about the trust. And create a class session that has a vision. Now, in that, we may not always have it in our syllabi and saying that this class is about differential equations. This is what we're going to talk about today. You're like, ooh, so exciting. Okay, since most of you are not math people. Ooh, we're going to talk about fractions. Ooh, so exciting. But if we make it in the sense of where it leads to and show how it relates to something, that'll maybe get their excitement as well too and motivate them as well. And make it live. Ooh, I know. Like I said, all natural. All natural. Use some stories in your class. And again, show your students that you can relate to their situations. And again, like I said, I use my brother Yuli, who did fail when we were in high school. I was a freshman. He was a sophomore at the time. He failed his sophomore year. I caught up to him. But I used that to say that, yeah, my parents didn't know what to do. And when I went through classes, they didn't know. I remember my mother and my father sitting down in the counselor's office and they were saying, oh, he has to take this class. And my dad looked at my mother and said, they never took that class. And when I say that class, I had calculus in my senior year in high school. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know how to act. They didn't know how to approach it. They didn't know how to help me. They just didn't know some of the things that I went through in my college prep program. And the choices that we all make in this case, maybe that helps as well too. Your students have a lot of choices. They chose your class maybe because of time, but they probably chose your class for other reasons. And if you didn't know, they can do research on us, rate my professor, but they're listening to their classmates and seeing what they can get from the class as well too. But how do we do those things? Not be the clown or not be the theater major that we're not, but keep it engaging, keep it motivating, and you want them to come back. So think of it like a TV show. You're interested in that wonderful TV show they just talked about, and you're like, what kept you going back to that TV show? Maybe ask them that question and use that in your instruction. And again, share with your colleagues, like I'm doing with all of you, but share with them the things that you do in your classroom to do that. And again, I have several people that want to come to my class and say, Tuan, we hear your class laughing all the time. Yeah, but I'm doing things because of the fact that I've learned about them in the beginning so that they'll keep coming back and learning rather than thinking this class is waste of their time. And again, like I said, I always do talk about mathematics and saying it's the worst subject because most people, that's exactly what I'll get. Mario, why are you here? "Oh, they told me to be here." Who's they? Maureen, why are you here? Oh, because I failed the other class. I had to take this again. Oh, okay. Why did you fail the class? Well, you know what? Let's talk about that. Maybe let's talk about why you failed the class. Or Vincent comes in and says, you know what? Vincent, why are you here? It's the only class fits my schedule. And I'm thinking, wow, that makes me feel good. But let me work with that. Let me show him why it works in his schedule. Let me show why she won't fail this class again. And let me show you that it is going to be fun. We try to do certain things. So connect with your students. Greet them, as one of the researchers says. Always greet them by name or pronoun if they prefer, or preferred name as well too. Learn about your students. Learn their names. Send them emails in this case. Give that positive energy. Always have positive energy. And engage casually with them as well too in conversation. Now, this one also relates to not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom as well too. Because the research that Ceci report that Shelley was talking about, it does say that students hate when professors, instructors do not know their names outside the classroom. It happens. There was a short video that I had, but yeah, we'll skip it. We'll skip it. Unless you really want to watch it. No, maybe. So exciting. Yeah, let's do it. We may not want to do all that. But I pause it because I like this because it starts off exactly some of us that do that. We pick on individuals that maybe just ask the question, but never acknowledge them or praise them, even for the wrong answer. In my class, there's never a wrong answer. It's like, you know what, that's a good attempt. Let's see if we can expand on that. And I think that's the other motivation for those students that feel all the time in the past when they were told, oh, Tuan, what was this? Oh, it's 7. Wrong. You're stupid as hell. Get out. And it's like, okay, then I'm never coming back, because now you're not going to respect me, nor are you going to help me. And now I feel intimidated in class. Yeah, no, I don't want that. So I'm going to pause it right there because the rest of it is more funny in this case. But yeah, it's all about making sure that we engage our students, keep them motivated, find different things, and these creative connections that you have with your students work. They really do. And even a little thing about preferred name and pronoun, because I have a student, for example, who goes by the pronoun X. They told me on the first day of class, I'm like, okay, I respect that. They withdrew from all their other classes because the other professors, our colleagues, didn't respect that. So they were about to withdraw from the college. And like, they heard that my class, which was the college algebra class that the student was in, and saying, oh no, Professor Dean does all these crazy things. And the student came in and it's like, oh, they told me, I prefer X if that's okay with you. Sure. I said, is it spelled different? And the person looked at me and was like, wait, what? Yeah. Is it spelled with an I or E, A, or B? And they realized that I was joking and laughed with me because I wanted them to feel comfortable that I would be comfortable saying the same thing. Can you all think of any tips that we would like to share with each other on how you motivate your students or engage your students to be motivated or motivate yourselves to come to Triton in the code when it was snowing on a gloomy day?
Well, certainly once a week, my class is high flex, so I have maybe 2 people come to class and everyone else is online. They work with software as well as presentations. And so every week I send them a text, indicating what they've done and their accomplishments, acknowledging what they've done, acknowledging their accomplishments, and then letting them know that I'm available.
Nice. You can also do that in Blackboard as well too. You can send, do it every 2 weeks. I send out applause to my students and saying that you did a wonderful job in this case. Yeah. I don't know about text because I hate text messages. I really do.
I find that very good. Only thing that students will read.
You're absolutely right. I think I have to break my code, but I feel that it's an evasion because they didn't give me their number unless I asked them on the first day and say, well, I love to give text messages. Can you all please put down your name, your number next to your name? But then I'm also thinking maybe some other, because the sign-in sheet goes around, maybe others don't want to see their number being broadcast or anything. So I'm gonna try that, Maureen, but I'm gonna see how it works out.
No one knows anyone else's number. I mean, I get the numbers.
Okay, but I'm saying for the sign-in sheet, that's what I would do. But I'm gonna have to see how I'm gonna break that because I just really hate text messages. Mm-hmm. And I say this with all respect because I used to do that. I gave at the other institution, without mentioning it because we're reporting for Triton. At the other institution when I was an adjunct, I gave students my phone number. I regret it because I had 2 students who called me unnecessary for unnecessary things. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you're trying to be nice, and you're like, oh, okay, you realize it's 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, but I just wanted this question to be answered. We could have waited until class.
Yeah, I've never had anyone take advantage of me.
It must be me. Vincent, Margaret, how about you two? Not in that order.
I mean, a lot of the things on there, but I guess like specific things to me, to keep myself motivated, I, you know, have a clear list, like I've made it like my intentions as a nursing instructor, and I look at them like from time to time to like reconnect, like why am I doing this, like what's the value in this, like what do I really want students to get out of it, and then I also, at some point, in the beginning, I asked them those questions, but then towards the end, I asked them like, what is your mission statement as a nurse? What are your top 3 values? So again, like solidifying why is this journey important to them. And then I guess my whole like mantra as a teacher is kind of I'm high on expectations, which I think motivates them, and they know that, and I'm very clear on expectations, but I also try to be like equally really high on support and warmth. Yeah. So like I'm gonna push you, but I'm also gonna be there for you. So that's kind of like the balance that I find works well. And then I guess lastly, I give a ton of feedback, but I mean I'm also in the clinical setting, but I try to equally balance like constructive, like okay, here's where you can improve, with here's where you're doing really well. And even if it's something you can improve on, you know, I try not to expect, like, I think a lot of them want themselves to be perfect at skills that they've never, you know, so I really try to normalize, like, you're not going to be perfect at this. That's not the expectation. We have to be safe and we have to be competent, but kind of normalizing that.
I like it. I like it. I'm going to steal 2 things you said. Vincent.
Well, a lot of the things you mentioned, I do. I do tell stories all the time, mostly about my kids, you know. And they can kind of relate to that because similar generation. My kids are getting near the end of college. And I'll also tell, you know, personal stories. I do a lot of chemistry. At least big parts of chemistry are told from historical perspective, and sometimes you learn about these scientists that made these discoveries. And I usually try to make it a little more interesting. Like I'll talk about the person where he's from, maybe a little bit about him. Like the other day, and it kind of tied the 2 together. The other day, I was talking about Linus Pauling, and a lot of people know about Linus Pauling, but not everybody. He actually won a Nobel Prize in Chemistry and a Nobel Peace Prize. And I told him about how he's just like a normal. He was just like a normal kid. Grew up in Washington and then became this Nobel Prize winner. And I got to meet him when I was in grad school.
Nice.
So, you know, that kind of brings it to life. This was a real person. It's not just a picture of a scientist, right? So I do those kind of stories all the time. And I feel like the more dad jokes I can tell, the better the lecture is. I throw these really bad puns and jokes in my lecture sometimes. If they groan, then I know I've done okay.
I like that. I actually, yeah, I do too. Not dad jokes, not a dad, but I always put myself in scenarios and I relate back to when I was a student as well too. And my favorite that I told my students when one of my students came to class and he was just so angry. Like, why are you angry? Everybody's, you know, looking around and he's like, my other instructor just did it. I'm like, okay. And it made you angry because it reflected bad on you or something. And he explained why, because the instructor put him in a spotlight he doesn't like. And I said, you know what? I know how you feel. What do you mean? I said, I know how you feel. I said, I had a professor in this case always put me in the spotlight. And I said, you know, they did that. And to this day, I said, I did a wonderful thing. My parents always regretted that and asked me about it. And he was like, what? So I'm trying to calm him down because now he's calm a little bit. I said, when I walked across the stage, I gave her the finger. And she was about to reach out and say, oh, congratulations. No, gave her the finger. My parents like, why you do that? She knows why. I said, of all my college years, I told my student, I said, that's the only B I've received. And that instructor made me so mad that day because I did not have my grade that I wanted. And he's like, so you did that? I said, yeah. But I'm doing two things with you. You're calm now because now you're not angry at the other instructor that you can't focus in here. And it was funny because he said, really did that? No, I gave her the hand. I didn't give her all the fingers. And he's like, oh, okay. So everyone else is laughing about it. But yes, I do things like that. And I think with that student he respected me to do that because the fact that I didn't want him to feel so targeted in class and being so focused on his anger and not be engaged in the classroom itself. And the fact that day, for all of you, was the day that he was counted as the administrative assistant in the class. One of the things I do for my engagement of my students, each class is an administrative assistant, he or she or they record the notes in the class, and at the end of the class, they award points to the class itself. That's their job, to give encouragement. So I'll have, for example, I say, Vincent, you're the administrative assistant to come in today. He's all excited. He's like, what is my task? All you're doing is taking notes. If someone asks a question, your job is to say, hold on, professor, this person has a question, and I'll respect that. At the end of the class, your job is to find out from your classmates. I'll set 5 minutes outside to find out what today's points would be like. Every student wants to have that job because they want to get those points awarded. There's only been one person that decided to keep the points for themselves, and everybody's like, what? We did everything. But the student was only joking. But other than that, I found that as a trial and error for my class, and it just kept working every class. So I just continued to do it. It just works. Well, some days. Some days. So motivating adults is a little challenging for all of us as well too, because we're adults ourselves. And we try to find the things to motivate them, even if we're teaching, like I used to teach adult education courses, which is GED and ESL. And when I first started teaching at the college level, my advisor at the time when I was getting my second master, she told me, she said, this will be the best job for you because you want to teach adults. They're in that transition of getting their high school equivalents, subject that you know, but they're still adult learners. And she said, you can read a ton of books, but it's not until you get in the classroom and actually start working with them and see things that you can do. So went through a lot of workshops and seminars on music, humor. I do that a lot as well too. I also challenge them as well too. Keep that high expectation. Avoid any obvious and awkward things in the classroom. Teaching unplugged, yeah, because I hate more structure. Because I tell my students, I know what a structured classroom is like, and no one likes that. No. I say, you go to class, your professor says, this is what we're going to be doing. And I gave them the example of Dr. Zimmerman, who was my calculus 2 teacher. He told us on the first day of class, don't talk to me if I'm in the hall because I'm doing my lecture. And he was not joking. We couldn't ask him any questions. He talked to himself. My students said, was he crazy? Well, he was brilliant, but if you want to say crazy. But then he'll come to class, 1, 2, 3, 4, structure. Yes, I'll answer questions at the end. Well, I have a question now. And now it's towards the end. He's out the classroom. You can't ask him any questions. So I said, I know what structured classrooms are like. I didn't like it. This is not that classroom. And use the skills that we've learned. I know that we don't go to school to be educators. We go to school for our expertise in our fields. But learning how to talk to our students, how to facilitate a class, not relying on what we've learned from our predecessors, maybe changing those things. And always give yourself a break. Unplug at home. I do it all the time because First thing I want to do, get home, relax, have some time to myself before I have to answer emails. So texting, that's why I'm like, I'm gonna try it, Maureen. I'm gonna try it. So some true motivational things that I've learned there's a video, but we're gonna, because of time. Here's some things that are true motivation that you can give to your students. Always praise them, always inspire them to be their best, encourage them, and encourage them. Reward them, even if it is like a small thing. Like I said, for my class today, the administrative assistant awarded points. It's a small thing, but to them, it's a huge thing because the fact that they learned something in class, and I'm not taking granted for what they were doing. I wanted them to do that. Repeat these things as well too. Share and learn from everything that you do. We're a learning institution, like I tell my students. We're a learning institution. As instructors, we learn as well too. So some days, and I'll do it in class as well too, I'll fall down and it's like, Professor, are you okay? But I learned from what I'm doing. Or I'll make a mistake in a problem, and I'll have a student, Margaret raises her hand. Tuan, yes, Margaret, that's supposed to be a 7, right? You know, you're right. You're absolutely correct. Thank you. I appreciate that. It slipped my mind. Actually, I did it on purpose, but I don't tell them that because I want them to be acknowledged in the classroom, and I also want them to talk as well too. There's a wonderful reference book for all of you. It's called Motivate the Unmotivated. That's the name of the workshop. You can get this PowerPoint presentation if you would like. Give this book a wonderful read. There's another wonderful website to go to as well too that gives a lot of different things that you can do in class. And especially since we're dealing with adult learners, some of the research out there deals with children, but as adults, it's a little bit different because they're already coming in with a mind focus, with a goal maybe to do X, Y, and Z. And children, in this case, because they don't really have all the pressures as adults do. They don't have to worry about work, family, school, life, and etc. They just have to worry about going home, coming to school, going home, coming to school. So keeping those factors in your mind when you're dealing with your students and helping them to understand that it will lead to a longer goal for them. Share some anecdotes of what happened to you or in the past, and always have fun. Students like to have fun as well too. And if you're having fun in class, they see that you're encouraging them to have fun as well. That's all I have for you all. But I will end by saying this before I open up to any comments, is that every class, like I said, I will always greet them by name, but at the end of the class, I always have a different phrase. But today's saying in this case was, stay young, stay beautiful, but math is just around the corner for all of us. Woo, it hit me too. Questions, comments?
Is that author Rob Clevin?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
I thought of one other thing that works really well, and I combines two things, like the not taking yourself too seriously, but like I said, I give a lot of feedback, but I also really openly encourage feedback from the students.
Mm-hmm.
So every evaluation that I do, I ask them if they have any feedback, but then I really push them, like, what really worked well? What didn't I do so well? And I think some of my greatest ideas of like what motivates and what doesn't, like I think something's going great, and they're like, that totally fell flat.
Yes.
Or vice versa. And then I think they also like respect and trust me more because like I'm a human too. I always try to normalize that. So,
That is true.
yeah, so I get a lot of good ideas from them too, or like feedback of what's working.
You're absolutely true about that.
Yeah.
That's why, for me, that's why I started the administrative assistant. I used to say secretary, but then one of my students said, that's sexist. And I'm like, you know what? You are absolutely correct. I said, but you realize men can be secretaries too. She didn't know that at the time. I said, yeah, like Secretary of State. You're right. But I said, but you know what? Let's call it administrative assistant. So I learned, and I changed that because my students said that. And again, the student didn't know that men could be secretaries, but it was fine. But you're right. I do that as well too. And at the end of the semester, online in Blackboard, one of the questions that they're part of their evaluation for me is to say, what would you have changed or added to the class to make it more engaging? And you're right, I do get a lot of different things. I remember one comment saying, stop talking about your family. So, specifically, they were talking about my brother Yuli because I say he was dumb as hell. I say, but I can say that. But anyone else says that, I'm done defending. But if he was here, he'd be like, yeah, I failed. So I try not to do that again. All right. Please fill out the evaluation that's on the table for all of you. I greatly appreciate you all showing up and attending. I love to see you around campus. I see your beautiful and smiling faces because it is always a joy to see and meet colleagues outside the disciplines of mathematics. And yeah, everyone's favorite subject. I know, Vincent. Everyone says that. You'll say it too. Yeah. Chemistry is like, oh. But like I said, I remember telling my students that story when one of my students said they were taking chemistry. I said, I remember those days. Hector blew up our lab. What? Yeah, we were in high school. And I remember Miss Allen would say, don't do this in her German accent. So I didn't pretend to imitate it. I said, but yeah, she told us she was German. But, don't mix these things together. Boom. There it is, the whole lab. So again, for all of you on social media, which in Blackboard, thank you for participating. Thank you for allowing me to talk about motivating and unmotivating not only ourselves, but our students. I hope that you enjoy this presentation and take something from it, even if it's a little thing of sharing music, maybe some candy. There's one colleague who actually does that. His name is Jim, who works in a social science department. He actually shares candy and praises his students with the candy as well too. Take something from it and hopefully not only to keep your students motivated, but keep yourself motivated, but also encourage them to take the time out just to relax, because every subject they'll come to you and say is hard, it's difficult, and it's challenging. But in the end, it will lead them to the direction or the pathway they want to go to, and share that you went on that same journey and you've had some rough times as well too. Again, thank you so much everyone, and be safe.